Hello everybody, this is a tutorial video on how to assemble your Project 1 for the Cinema 2 class at Los Angeles City College. I just launched Premiere and this is the welcome screen, and let me show you that on my hard drive I have a folder where I've titled it Editing Tutorial Cinema 2, and inside that folder I have placed all of the shots that I took with my iPhone, and there are 17 shots here. And I want to stress that you want to make sure you can get your images from your phone or your camera onto your computer, onto a hard drive, and then you want to put them all in the same folder, and that's also where you're going to save your project, so you want to know where everything is. So here I can change the view from icon view to text view, and okay, so let me close that, open up Premiere, and I'll go ahead and say New Project. And this first screen is very important. First we'll give it a name, and I will say Cinema 2 Project 1 Demo. And the next line is really important because that's going to be the location of your project, specifically your project file, which is going to hold all the information about your project. So you always want to know where this is, and you can set it to any location on your computer. So I'm going to go ahead and put it in that same folder where my images are. So I'll go ahead and click Browse, navigate to where that folder is. I know it's on my desktop, and there's the Editing Tutorial Cinema 2. So I'm just going to put my Premiere Pro project in that same folder. So let me go ahead and select the folder. I'll say OK. Now Premiere is going to create the project, and it's going to open up the machine. My computer's a little bit slow, so then you'll get the blank interface. And let me just go back to that folder, click on it, and show you that now there is the project that I just created. So you always want to know where everything is. The last thing you want in post-production is to not know where something is. So okay, so back to Premiere. Now Premiere is a really straightforward editor. A lot of editing software is very similar. You can see as I'm clicking on these various panels in the interface that there's a blue outline, and if you zoom in you can see the name of the panel. So that's the project panel. Up here is the source panel. Then we've got our timeline, and finally our program. And your workflow is typically going to be down here. You're going to import all of your shots. You're going to make your selections from those shots up here in the source window. You're going to bring them down to the timeline. Here's where you're going to assemble your film, and then you're going to see your output up here. So that's pretty much your workflow. So there's always a lot of things to do any given task in Premiere and in any editing software. So and you will learn in your own way. I think once you get faster, you'll start to use the keyboard a lot more. But until then, there's always a lot of choices. So as we go in here into the project panel, another button that's really important is right above the tab key. It's called the tilde button, or the grave key. It's that little accent along with the wavy line above the tab key, and that's important because whenever you push that, it gives you a full screen of any given window. So I like to use this a lot just to see everything that I'm working on to give me the maximum real estate possible. So I'm always pushing this button to maximize any given panel wherever I'm working. So we can see here it says import media to start. That is really the first step, and we can import all of the shots at once. So let me double click in that window, and it takes me right to the location, but you can obviously navigate to anywhere your media is. So I'm going to select all of my shots, and I'm going to do that by clicking on the first one, holding down Shift, clicking on the last one, so we can see it's selected all of the shots. Go ahead and say open. Now it's going to import all of those shots, and it's important to know that we're not actually bringing the media into Premiere. There's no physical media inside the project. Instead, these are just links to the media. This is just digital information that's pointing to the media. So let me use that tilde key to go maximize the window. We can see some information. We can see it's at basically 30 frames per second. and that the footage is 1920 by 1080. All the shots are the same, and right now I am in list view. Also, if you hover over any button in Premiere, you can see it tells you what you're going to see. So list view gives us just a list. Icon view will actually show us the shots. So when you're just getting started, this is very useful. And you can also use this slider down here to increase the size of the shots. And you can also, once you're in here, you can grab the shots and just physically rearrange them. I'm clicking and dragging. And also, as you can see in icon view, you can use your mouse just to hover over any given shot. So you can see here, I'm not clicking on anything. I'm just hovering through this shot. I can hear my computer working like crazy. So, alright, so that's really the first step. That's how you can import your media, get it into your software. From there, it's about choosing your in and out points and laying shots into the timeline, and then making those fine edits. Okay, now as you know, we're first asking for just an assembly of all of your shots before any editing. We just want to see your raw dailies. So numerous ways that you can do that, and I'll show you a very easy way. And also, you can shoot as many shots as you want. You can have as many takes as you want. Hang on a second. Yeah. Okay. So you can take as many takes as you want. You can also shoot the shots in any order that you want. It's entirely up to you, but we do want to see the shots in order that we asked for. So let me just go full screen on this, and let me go up to icon view. And I think one of the easiest ways to do this is, as you can see, I'm hovering my mouse over. Let me go make these even bigger. I'm hovering my mouse over the shots, so I'm just gonna stop the shot on the frame that shows the slate, that shows what number the shot is, and I'm just going to rearrange these shots right here in icon view, because as you know, I can grab these and rearrange the shots just like this. And so I'm going to first list all the shots. Like here's number 1, so let me put that one in the beginning. So I'm going to list all the shots in order. I'm going to arrange them all in order, and then I can pull them over to the timeline in one shot. Okay, I'm back, and even though I shot these shots out of order, right now I've arranged them all in the order that we're asking for them. So you can see as I hover over these, I'm just going to the slate shot, and I'm seeing that now they're all in the right order. So now that I have all of these in order, let me go ahead and select all, Command A or Control A. I'm using a PC. If you're using a Mac, the Command key is the same as Control on a PC. So now that I've highlighted all of these, let me minimize them. And what we need to do next is create a sequence. So quickest way to do this, if you look down here, there's something called a new item icon, and if I just drag all of those shots onto that, then it's going to create a sequence that matches the footage. So the sequence is going to be 1920 by 1080, 30 frames a second, and it's also going to lay all of these in a timeline in the order that I have arranged them. So very convenient. So if I click and drag and drop, then it's going to create a sequence. Hang on, computer's a little bit slow. And there we've got all of our shots on the timeline. So let me move in a little bit closer, and we can see as I move this playhead, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright, so and these are all the raw shots because I didn't make any selections on these shots. And let me go, there's a few buttons that you want to get familiar with right at the outset once you have your shots on the timeline. First set of buttons is JKL, so you want to practice navigating using JKL. And if you look at those 3 buttons on the keyboard, They fit nicely with your 3 fingers, and if essentially L is the play button, K is start and stop, J is to go backwards. Also the space bar starts and stops, so as I push the space bar it starts, as I tap it again it stops. So JKL is a great way to navigate. You can also use your icon and just grab the playhead. Typically you want to grab the playhead from this spot right here, grab it, move forward. We can also see there's a playhead up here in the program panel, and as I move this we can see it also playing in the timeline. The playhead is showing you which frame you are currently looking at in the program panel. There's also a key right above enter, which is the backward slash key, and that shows you your full sequence in the window. I also use plus and minus to zoom in and zoom out. So as I push minus I go farther away, as I push plus I go closer, and it takes me right in all the way down to the frame level. So we can see here that's the duration of 1 frame. So as I hold K and tap L, I'm navigating 1 frame. So I like to use plus and minus to move out, to move in when you're making those fine edits, and I also like to use that backward slash to show me my full sequence. Also the home and the end keys take you to the beginning and the end of your timeline. Also the up and down arrow, once you have shots in the timeline, the up and down arrow will take you to each edit point. And I'll point out others as we come across, but I think those are the very basic navigation tools that you want to use, ways to get around your timeline. Okay, now that we have our assembly of shots in the timeline, we know how to do basic navigation. I want to talk about some really important organizational points. So let me go back to the project panel, use the tilde key to maximize, and let me go down to list view. So I'm just going from the icon view to list view, and it displays everything as a list. And as you can see, we have something new here. So what is this? That's a different icon, and it looks like a sequence. There's a little playhead, there's a couple of tracks there, as compared to the icons of the shots, and you can see those look like a film strip with the waveform in front of it, so that's telling us that these clips have sound and picture. So what it does is it names your sequence. This is called our sequence, and as I hover over it, it shows me the specs of the sequence. So this is a 1920 by 1080, but we want to rename this because it gives it the name of the clip that you bring over. So I brought over all the clips. It looks like it named it based on the last clip. So we can rename a file by just clicking on it, and then I'm going to call this rough assembly, or actually let me call this raw dailies. That's a more accurate name for what we're looking for. And we also want to organize our project panel. As you edit, you want to constantly keep this organized. So I'm going to create some bins. In editing they're called bins. They're basically folders. As I hover over this I can see new bin. So let me go ahead and create one. You can also right click in the gray area. If I right click and say new bin, and oftentimes you can just create a couple of new bins right away. Let me just do a whole bunch. So now we can start filing our assets in this project panel. So I'm just gonna call this shots. Let me call another one sequences. Let me call another one music, and let me make one more for now and call that one new bin titles, because we're going to create a title later. So now let's start organizing things. Let me click the top shot, hold down the shift key, select the next shot and drag them and put them right in the shots folder. And let me grab the sequences and put it in there. So as you edit, you're going to be importing new stuff, and you always want to keep everything as organized as possible. So let me minimize this. And what we're asking for is all of your raw dailies in order, along with your edited version. So for me, in order to do this, I'm going to create a different sequence, and I'm going to have this, but I'm also going to create a new sequence where my edited version is, and then at the end I'm going to combine them both before I export. So let me go ahead and come over here to my sequences folder, and let me just double click that. By the way, you can go into bins, and then this button will bring you out of the bin, but once you go into one, you've still got the tab here. So as you open more bins, you're going to have more tabs open here. So if you want to close one, you can always click on this little menu here and just say close panel. So let me go ahead and go into my sequences bin. I'm going to select this, and I'm going to copy and paste it in order to duplicate it. So Command C, click in the gray area, Command V. Now I've got a duplicate sequence, and now let me rename this edited version. You can name them whatever you want. I'm going to give it that name, then I can click this to come out, and now I've got two sequences in there. And let me open this. I'm going to double click it, which is going to open it in the timeline, and now I've got two different sequences that are actually identical. So in order to do my edited version, I'm going to work from a clean slate here. So one good way to let me tilde this. As you mentioned, you can go full screen on any window. Good way to select things, I could Command A, select all the shots, or I could lasso around them, and you can lasso right to left, left to right. I'm just going to click and drag around all of these and push delete, and that gives me a blank sequence. By the way, we'd mentioned that when we created the sequence, it matches the footage. So we know our footage is 1920 by 1080, 30 frames a second. So if I come up here to sequence, and if I look at the sequence settings, then it'll give me the settings of the sequence, and that's 1920 by 1080, 30 frames a second. So it matches perfectly. I'm just going to say OK. I wanted you to see that our final output is going to match our original footage, and that is ideal in any post-production. So from here, I want to go back to my shots, and I want to start editing the shots. Alright, so as we mentioned, in your edited version of your Project 1, we do want to see all the shots, but they could be in whatever order you choose, and you could use whatever portions of those shots that you would like. So I'm going to go ahead and walk you through how I put mine together, and I think as a director, you always want to see your movie in your head. You want to have an idea how it's going to be assembled before you even shoot it. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my shots folder, and I'm going to find the first shot that I envisioned would be the opening of my project. And that's going to be this tilt down. So when you double click on a shot in your project panel, it opens up in the source panel, and then you can use your navigation tools to play through it. So this is my tilt shot. So as I push L, it goes forward. As I push K, it pauses. J backwards. You can also push L a bunch of times to go in fast motion. You can push K a bunch of times to go through, to go in reverse in fast motion. So as you can see, I did this tilt down several times. So you always want to watch all of your media. That's generally the first thing you do as an editor, is you just sit back and watch everything. And you can leave markers, you can include comments on those markers. But it's a very important first step, is to watch everything, because oftentimes you pick out good stuff that you didn't anticipate and you end up using it. So I'm going to use this second tilt down. I did the tilt about 3 times in the shot. So when you're selecting shots, you want to put in your edit points. You want to select your in and out point of the shot, because obviously we're not going to use this whole shot. We're going to only use a portion of it. So to set your in and out point, there's a couple of buttons right here. Mark in, mark out. You can also use the keyboard shortcuts of I and O, and we can even see in these little pop-ups, they show us the keyboard shortcut. So with the playhead at the starting point of the tilt, I'm going to put I and push the letter I, and that gives me an in point. Now we can see there's a little grayed out area signifying that this is now the in point of the shot that I'm going to use. So let me play it forward until the tilt down ends. Stop it about right there. That's good. Now I'm going to hit O to set my out point. So now we can see among this whole shot, all the footage, we've got just this little portion selected. So that's what I want to use. So you can edit your project however you like. I think it's good to build it from left to right. So there's a couple of ways that I can bring this shot down, and let me show you those. I can click and drag and drop, and there's the shot. Let me zoom in a little bit. So as I play now in the program monitor, I can see my opening shot, and it stops right there. Let me do Command Z. You want to know Command Z, which is undo. You will be using that a lot. Instead, I can click on the Insert button, shortcut comma, or overwrite, shortcut O. We'll talk about the difference between insert and overwrite in a little bit. But if I go ahead and click Insert, then the same shot pops up with the playhead at the end, ready for the next shot. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that as is. And now I want to go and choose my next shot. And my next shot, I think, was the subject looking at the car. So let me double click that shot to bring it up into the source monitor. And then I want to go again to the in point, and I can just play it. I want to set my in point as she's looking down the street looking for the car. And I think I'm going to use that part. I kind of like how she's standing there, sort of looking down. I like the shift of eyes. The great editor said that editing is a dance of eyes. A lot of edits are motivated by looks. So you can hear me directing even. I'm just going to start that as the end point. So I, and this is just going to be the first shot. O. First shot establishing that she's looking for a car. So now that the playhead is in the right spot, I can tap comma or insert, and it ends up right there in the right spot that I want. So if I want to look at this edit, I can see there's the tilt down, and I'm going to take out my directing anyway. So also, if you want to look here in the timeline, we can see we've got a mute track and a solo track. So if I just want to mute this whole track and not hear any of it, I can click this, and then I'm not going to hear any of my directing. I'm going to put music on it later anyway. So alright, so there she is. Okay, so now playhead stops. It's all ready for the next shot. So let me go down and find the shot of the car coming. Double click that one. And again, I'm going to set my in point. And there it is. So let me, I just want to, right about there, in, because I know I'm going to be intercutting a few times, out, and then comma again. So now we've got 3 different shots all in order. Let's look at that second edit and see how it looks. Alright, the pan starts, so in the next shot I want to cut back to her as she's turning her head. But you can just see between I for O, out for, or sorry, I for in, O for out, and then comma for insert, you can just lay all of your shots in order. The portions of the shot that you're going to use, not the whole shot. I, O, comma, and before you know it, you've got all your shots in order. Okay, so I've added a few more shots. I've completed the pan and the look. So let me go ahead and take a look at this. And we talked about the tilde key, that little wavy line above the tab key, that can go full screen. It's really useful if you want to watch your final scene to go ahead and tilde this screen. And just an inside shortcut, if you control tilde, then that gives you a cinema mode. That gives you the full screen. So really great for watching your edit. And in order to get out of this, you can't push escape or anything. You have to push control tilde again. So let's go ahead and watch this sequence of shots, and I'll go ahead and do Control tilde to go full screen. Alright. Okay, great. And I kind of like, this is a happy accident, but I kind of like the little flutter of wind in her ponytail after she's done watching the car. So a lot of times when you edit, you don't intend for something to be really good, but it works out great, and we call those happy accidents. So good editing is definitely sometimes 50% happy accidents. So another thing I wanted to point out is that earlier you saw me mute this track because I didn't want to hear it while I was editing. I was just editing really for the picture. There's also a solo button that I mentioned where if you're dealing with multiple tracks of audio and you want to solo one track so that you only hear that track, you can just push that little S right there. And these also exist in After Effects. So sometimes in After Effects you might have hundreds of layers, and this is a really good way to just isolate one layer. So, but since we're talking about audio, let me point out a couple of things. Couple of buttons I don't know if I have pointed out in this tutorial yet. I'm actually resuming this after the class on Thursday. So snapping is good to keep active, this little button here, snapping. And just to illustrate what that does, where for example, say I want to bring this shot up to this part of the playhead, then if I drag it up, you can see how it just snaps to it. So snapping kind of anticipate what you're going to do, and it's like a little magnet. Whereas if snapping was not on, if this was turned off, then move over a little bit. Then if I have the playhead and I want to move the shot to the playhead, that it doesn't just snap to it, so it doesn't really know what I want to do. So snapping, for the most part, you want to have this active. And let me undo those. The other button here that I wanted to point out is linked selection, because as you can see, when it's active, I can't click on any video or audio portion without selecting the whole clip, because it came in as audio and video together. But sometimes you do want to just select the audio or the video, and if we uncheck this linked enable, then whenever I click on any one element of a clip, it only selects that part. There is a shortcut that's really useful where instead of going all the way over here to toggle off linked selection, I can hold down the Option or the Alt key, and then we get just the element. I'm holding down the modifier of Option on a Mac or Alt on a PC. Okay, and one way that we might use that, selecting just the audio in order to improve the edit, let me just play this and you can listen to the soundtrack. We can see that because we've got the shots have their own sound attached to them, that listen to how it sounds when we watch it. So we can see that the sound of the car cuts off when we cut back to the subject, and we can even look at the waveform. And let me go ahead and make the waveforms longer. Often it's really a good idea to have your waveform, your track height, be enough that you can see the waveform. So I'm going to come over here to this track header and hold down the Option key or the Alt key on a PC, and I'm just going to use my scroll wheel on the mouse to hover, and this changes the track height. So I can also do it for the picture, and that lets me see the little thumbnail images. So how can I make this sound of the car consistent and to last all the way through the edits? Because the quality of sound is going to actually make it a lot better. So let me Option click on the sound that I don't want. So I'm going to Option click or Alt click, and then I'm just going to delete that. And let me go to the other shot of her, Alt click, delete that. And then I'm going to take this sound of the car, and if I Option, and this is actually showing you a little bit of trimming. If I want more of this shot, I can just Alt click on it and extend it out. Alt click on it from here as well, extend it out. That's about as long as it's going to go. And then this is actually the sound from the same clip, but to make sure it's smooth, let me go ahead and delete that, option click this, and bring it all the way over. So then we're going to get the sound of the car all the way through these shots, and I think it's going to sound a lot better. Yep. And we can actually see the waveform, we can see the sound of the car, and it's definitely much better. And let me also point out that we talked about using the insert and overwrite keys to bring your shots down, but you don't have to do that. We can see I've got my in and out point right here. I could just click anywhere in the picture here, click and drag and drop, and then I've got my shot in the timeline. And now let's talk about, once you have some shots in the timeline, how you can get around, how you can navigate. I think I mentioned that the backward slash key, which is right above the return key, is a way to show your whole project in the timeline. And once we have shots, let me let's say we wanted to exchange these two shots. Let's say they come in the opposite order that we want. So the long way to rearrange them is to just click and drag and kind of move them around, almost like you're working with puzzle pieces, just clicking on the actual clips and dragging them down, and that's one way that we could do that. And when you learn editing, oftentimes you don't know the fastest way to do something, so I think this is what makes good editors and experienced editors, is that they can really go faster. So when you're clicking on a clip, you want to make sure you're clicking in the right spot of the clip. So if I click here in the middle, then I'm selecting the clip, but let's say I want to click right here and move it. I'm not actually moving the clip, instead I'm actually changing the audio level. That's because this horizontal line is a way to control the level of audio. And the keyboard shortcuts are the bracket keys, the left bracket to turn it down, and the right bracket to turn it up. So whenever you're trying to select your clips, you want to make sure you're clicking in the right spot. Hang on, I'm just doing Command Z, undoing these changes. There we go. And there's also a redo function. You're going to use Command Z quite a bit, but you can also redo, which we can see is Control Shift Z. So I wanted to put those back the way I had them. But let's say we needed to exchange these two shots, and this is just a shortcut that I discovered at some point, and just makes it a lot faster. So I showed you the long way would be moving these kind of step by step, but there's a shorter way, and that is if I click the shot and then I start moving it, and then I hold down Command Option or Control Option on a PC, you can see it's a way to just exchange the clips themselves. They just switch places. So you can imagine when you're actually editing something and you're in the thick of it, this is a really fast way to accomplish that. And you will discover these as you continue your journey of learning editing. You'll discover how to go faster, the shortcuts. If you wanted to make a cut, an actual cut, there's a tool called the razor blade, the razor tool, and the shortcut is C there. Here's all of our tools right here in this little spot between the timeline and the project window. And if you ever see a little arrow on the corner, that means there are additional tools under there, so you can click and hold and see those additional tools. But if we just want to make a basic cut, we can select the razor tool, and anywhere we click now we can see the actual cursor is a razor tool, so I could just click and start making cuts. And let's say we were working quickly and we wanted to kind of select a portion and delete it, then I could use the key, the C key to select the razor, make an edit, push V, which is the shortcut back to the selection tool, select whatever I want, delete it. Let's say push C again, make a cut, V for the selection tool. So there really is a keyboard shortcut for everything. And at this point, if you're just learning, you want to know what's possible, and if you don't know a shortcut, oftentimes you can just Google the answer. If you start your search with Premiere Pro and then ask your question, you will find the answer right away. So Premiere Pro razor tool will show you that the shortcut is the letter C. Okay, I wanted to give you a little bit more of an illustration of the difference between insert and overwrite edits. And these are when you're adding material to your project. And just to make this really clear, let me put the playhead right between two shots. And I talked about snapping, and if you want to put the playhead right at this point, the shortcut is to hold down the shift key and then it'll snap there. So I'm going to put the playhead between those two shots, and then let me do both insert and overwrite to show you the difference. So because one of them will actually ripple the timeline. Sometimes you hear the term ripple edit. Ripple means that everything in the timeline is going to be affected, so it's going to push everything downstream like the waves of a pond ripple outward. So let's say I've got a couple of a marked clip here, a in and out point, and let me show you what insert does. So you see that on the timeline. Let me do that again, and I'll actually zoom in and I'll do the keyboard shortcut. So if I insert with the shortcut comma, you can see it lengthens the whole timeline. It doesn't delete any clips. So insert will ripple the timeline. As opposed to overwrite, so if I push this button or push the period, the shortcut for overwrite, let's see what happens. We can see that the new shot overwrote the current shots that are in that timeline on those tracks. So overwrite will actually delete whatever's there. It'll overwrite whatever's there, but it maintains the overall length of the sequence. So the overall length stays the same. Now let me also talk about this area of the timeline. This is the source column. If I hover the mouse over it, it says source patching. So yeah, source patching. Hang on a sec, where did it go? Source patching for inserts and overwrites. So this is the source. Whatever you have up here in the source window, this is telling us that there's one video track and one audio track. The right column is actually the target or the timeline track. These are the tracks that we have in the timeline. So right now, video 1 from the source is targeted to video 1 on the timeline, and same with the audio side. So if I change these, and let me go ahead and just patch audio 1 to audio 2, video 1 to video 2, and let me do the same thing on here. So if I do an insert or comma, we can see that it inserts the shot on video 2 and audio 2, and it ripples the timeline, so the whole sequence gets longer. Let me undo that. Control Z. If I overwrite that with the period key, then it just lays the shots right over the video 1 track and the audio 1 track, and the sequence length stays the same. So this is really useful if you're doing, say, a documentary, and your video 1 track is your interview track, and your subject is talking about something and you want to cut away to what they're talking about to some B-roll, then we can use that overwrite command to not change the overall length and just to allow that shot to show up there. Okay, you'll probably want to use some music in your final version, so I wanted to show you how you could bring a piece of music in using Clip Grab. And this is a software that we have on the lab computers, and you could also get it online. Just do a search for Clip Grab. It's a free download. It's a very reliable piece of software that can bring down usually anything from YouTube. It does require a lot of updates, so if, for example, Clip Grab needs an update that you don't have, sometimes it may not work on bringing clips in, but just keep it updated and it should work. So you want to have Clip Grab installed, and you want to have YouTube open, and I've found a piece of music here that I would like to bring in, and it's just a piece of guitar music. So once you find your clip, you can highlight the address, do Command or Control C to copy, and then it looks like Clip Grab has already discovered what I have, that I've copied an address. So oftentimes it shows up right here. If it doesn't, you can just Control or Command V to paste it. And then we just need to click on Grab this clip. And then Clip Grab will ask us where we want to save it. So I think it's a good idea to save it in the folder that has your media. So this is the folder that has all of my shots as well as my Premiere project, and I'm going to go ahead and save it there. Now Clip Grab goes to work in downloading it from YouTube. The longer the clip is, the longer it will take, but typically if it's just a few minutes, it happens really fast. So now I can go and look in that, and there is the piece of music that I want, and it did bring in the video and the audio, and we're only going to use the audio. So let me go back to Premiere and actually go into my music folder. Let me see, it looks like I've got, let me come back to my other project. I have a couple of different projects open. I actually opened up my final project, but let me go back to my music folder there. So if I go inside the music bin, then this is where I want to import it. So I'm inside the music bin, I can just double click to import, click on the piece of music, say OK, and here it comes. So if I double click that, then I can see this in the source monitor. And if you want to see just the music and not the picture, then this little button here, we can click on that and then we can see the waveform of the audio. And I can grab this playhead and put it towards the beginning. And let me go ahead and mark an in and an out, just like you do on your video clips. Mark an in, go forward about 20 seconds or so, mark it out, and then let's say on this, where is my edited version? There it is. So I want to target track 2, and I could just click and drag and bring it down to A2. That's probably the fastest way, or I could use the targeting method. Since it's there, I'm not going to do that now. Let me go ahead and Alt hover the mouse key and use the scroll wheel to make that track a little wider. And then we can see that, and even if I want to go in further and do some trimming, let's say that's the beginning of the song, and so that's where I want it to start, I can just grab the end, and this goes for trimming any shot. You can just click the edge and drag it to add or delete frames. So let me, now that I've set that there, let me move that to the very beginning, and then the music should start right at the beginning of my shot. Nice. I think I could hear myself directing in one of that earlier shots. So just to point out also that you could always, since we've got music playing, we can just disable. If I want to disable the audio on this, I could grab the level and move it all the way down, but instead I'm just going to disable the whole clip. So I'm going to Option click on that, or Alt click, right click, and then say uncheck this enable button. So now, as we can see, the clip is still there, it's just not active, it won't be played. So you will no longer hear me directing over that. So, okay. And then I should probably talk a little bit more about trimming. Let me get close here. Let's say, because you're always going to do that, you're going to, once you lay your shots in, you're always going to be tweaking until you get it just right. So let me show you how, let's say we wanted to take a couple of frames off this. I generally say to use the playhead to sort of mark your spot when you want to edit. Let's say this clip is playing and I want it to end right there. Then I can just put the playhead there and drag the edge of it up to there. And then if I wanted to fill this gap, if you have gaps in your timeline, you can right click and select Ripple Delete, and that's going to bring everything down. There's that term ripple again, which means the duration of the whole timeline is going to change. Okay, I pointed this out in class and I wanted to mention it here too, is that music always comes in loud. So you always want to adjust your levels to an adequate level, and music is always recorded loud, so you always want to lower it by a little bit, and we can do that before we bring it into the timeline. Now we can see here I've got the music clip in the source window. If I right click and I choose audio gain, then a window comes up that allows me to adjust the gain. We have a few options here, but we're going to use this option where it says adjust gain by, and I want to lower it, and I think 12 decibels is a good amount to lower it by, so I can type in -12, and watch what happens to these waveforms as soon as I do that. Wow, that got quite a bit lower, but now the music is just at a much nicer level. Yeah, so, and then you can bring it down and it'll be at that lower level. And once it's down there, let me just go to this music clip here. You can adjust the level by clicking this horizontal bar, as I mentioned, or using the bracket keys, left bracket, right bracket. And as it's playing, you can watch your meters over here on the far right. Meters give you a reading, and right now that is muted, so let me unmute that. And we can see right now it's peaking. It was peaking kind of up here around -6, which maybe that's a little bit on the loud side, but if I click that, if I just drag this down a little bit, then much better level. Alright, so one of the last things that we wanted to show you is how to use the titler in Premiere. You could go over here to the graphics layout and play around with some of those templates they have, but the Premiere Pro Legacy Titler is a really good title designer in Premiere Pro, and one of the shots that we're asking for is a digital title. So let me show you how to create that. If you come up to the File menu, New, Legacy Title, then you'll get a choice. It'll ask you about the video settings, and this is based on your sequence settings, so most of the time you can just leave the default. If you want, you can give it a title. I'm just going to leave it at Title 01 for now. So click OK, and then we get a floating window here that is the Premiere Pro Legacy Titler. And let me put my playhead actually over the first shot in my sequence. So I'm going to grab the playhead and put it right over there because this is where I want the title to come in. So it's showing me the frame that the playhead is over, and if you would rather see the transparent background, you can select this. Now it's just a blank background, but sometimes you want to see the title over the image that you see it coming into. So by default, the type tool is selected, and if you've ever used Photoshop, you're going to recognize a lot of these tools. So I can just click right in here and start typing. Cinema 2, Project 1, something like that. And then in order to choose a font, to change the font size and everything, we need to first select all of the type, all of the text. So we can go Command A to select everything, and then we can see the font size over here. Whenever you see one of these blue numbers, that means that you can click and drag right or left, and we can see as I click and drag right or left, the actual size of the font is changing. So let me get it to a decent size, and let's say I want to change the actual font. I can come up here and just click in this window to highlight everything, and then just use the down arrow, and right now I'm shuttling through all of the available fonts. So I think that was the one that I ultimately chose. So from here, let's go ahead and center it, center the alignment. Now it's centered, and then these two boxes here are really great. These will actually allow it to center in the frame. So that's the horizontal center, the vertical center. We can also change the color down here. If we click on this little square, we can choose virtually any color, and let's say we want to choose a kind of a deep red. Then we can click OK. We can also add a drop shadow, so we can click on the shadow, control all of the parameters that have to do with that shadow. There's so many choices, and so much you could do with this title designer. Let me go ahead and make it a little bit bigger, and it might even look good with a sheen or something. Yeah, let's go ahead and try that. Now that I changed the size, I'm going to recenter it. So let me click out of that. The reason the Legacy Title is so good is that you can click in and out of it all you want. It becomes a clip in your project. So let me move up here. I think it went into my musics folder because that's where I was. I'm going to click and drag and move that over into the titles folder. And then we can bring it in just like any other clip. And usually the titles, the text is going to be on your video 2 track. And we're going to see the text on top of the first shot. So, I don't know if I like that horizontal white line. Let me double click it, and go in there and take that sheen off, although we could probably make all kinds of adjustments to it if we like, but I'm just going to leave that as it is. And now the title is there right at the very beginning of the project. So also I wanted to point out how to do a fade in and fade out. And let's say I want the title to maybe not show up immediately. And once a title is in your timeline, you can trim it to any duration that you like. But let's say I want it to fade in. So a fade in, if I zoom in here nice and close and select the end of the clip, so I just want to select the end to where it's highlighted there, then I can do Shift D. Shift D is a shortcut for a cross dissolve, and if you put that at the beginning of a shot, it's going to give you a fade in. So let me take a look at how that looks with the fade in and the title. There we go. Alright. Also, just speaking of the cross dissolve, if you select any edit point, and you got to make sure it gets highlighted like that. If we push Shift D, then it gives us a dissolve instead of a straight cut. So let's see how that dissolve is. Yep. Alright. So oftentimes video dissolves are longer. If you want to have an audio dissolve between two audio cuts, sometimes a really short dissolve is really good just to make it sound smooth. Okay, well, I think based on all of these, all these little tips that we've gone through, you should be able to assemble your whole edit. And remember, we want to see all of your shots, but you can edit it any way that you like, in any order that you like. You can even use your extra credit shot if you would like to. One final thing that I wanted to show you about the Kuleshov effect, and here is my final Kuleshov, because we want to see the exact same look and reaction by your subject. So you're going to probably doing a lot of trimming to get the exact duration that you like, but let me just show you how you might want to do this, because we want to see the exact same look. They're looking at something, they're reacting to it. We want to see that 3 times, but we want to see how the meaning changes based on what you the shot that you put in between them. So let me go ahead and select both of this look and reaction. Command C, paste, and this is just to illustrate how you might do this. Let's say at first the look is a little bit longer, the reaction's a little bit longer. So we do it for one look. Let me see, let's see, I want to trim that shorter, and then the actual reaction, let me go ahead and trim that up here. There we go. So then in between here we're going to put whatever the subject is looking at. But we want to use the exact same look and the exact same reaction. So once you settle on that, it's very easy to just copy and paste. Just select all of them, Command C or Control C to copy, bring it down the timeline a little bit and do paste. And then we have the exact same look and the exact same reaction. And then we want to see that 3 times with whatever shot you put in between there to convey the power of juxtaposition. Alright, so the last thing that I want to show you, this is my whole project here, and I have it all in one timeline. So we can see all the raw shots. They take much longer than the actual edited portion. But we want to export everything. So you can turn in one file with all your raw shots and another file with your edited version. But if you could, it would be great to put them all on one timeline in order to export it once. So for example, if we've got our raw footage, then we've got our edited footage, and we want to combine the two, we can just come into the edited footage, Command A to select all, Command C to copy, come back there and Command V to paste, and then we've got everything in one timeline. Let me go ahead and show you how to export, and there's just a couple of settings. So you want to have the timeline selected. We can see the blue outline. Then we come up here to File, Export. Oops, let me not zoom in there. File, Export Media. And once we click on that, then we get the export window. There's really only one good choice at this level. We could select match sequence settings, and then whatever the sequence is, it's going to match that to create the final edit. But a lot of you may be shooting on different cameras and whatnot, so let me uncheck that. You want to come up here in the Format tab and select H.264. This is a codec that's very common, so just about every player around the world can play an H.264 file. So this is the method of compressing your project, and then wherever it's shown, it's also very easy to play on the other end. So it's really good in terms of good quality versus not a huge file size. So really just select H.264, then we select the output name because we're going to tell it where to save the project, and I'm going to go ahead and go to this folder. Let me actually come up here to the tutorial folder, and I'll just call this the. So I think we want to give your project a certain name when you turn it in. So we're going to say okay, so we know where it's going to be when it gets exported. Then all we have to do is click export, and I'm not going to do it now because it might take a couple minutes, but as soon as you click export, then it's going to process the file and create the file, and then it's going to show up in the destination wherever you put that. So I think that's it. So feel free to email or message on Canvas with any questions whatsoever, and you still have several days to complete your edit. Hopefully it's all going well, and we'll see you in the next class.